Alright, welcome back to Roguetech, and welcome back to the Comprehensive Guide series. Specifically, your first Roguetech playthrough. So, last episode we went over Day 0, the considerations and thoughts that go into planning what to do with the lance, based on what's in the store at your starting location. So now, at long last, we're going to click the button and proceed with the first day of our playthrough. Although I will note that that is literally the plan for the entire playthrough. Now, it will become faster and faster as time goes on, because everything I did last episode, the entire almost hour of Day 0 before doing literally anything, I literally do that every time I start a playthrough in Roguetech. But I've done it so many times, and I know exactly what I'm looking for and exactly where to look, with slight changes whenever they do change the UI and whatnot. I actually knew basically everything I was going to do to those mechs when the mech lab generated and I saw the models that I had, because any changes that weren't made between the last Roguetech and this one, I just already had knowledge. Like, I knew whenever I opened the 3V, the Locust, I knew exactly what it was going to have. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it, because I've dealt with Locust 3Vs so many times before. And that is specifically what the goal of this series is to help you learn from my experience, to soften the learning curve, and to get you onboarded and ramped up as quickly and effectively as possible, without any holes being left that you might otherwise have if you were just watching one of my playthroughs. So, with that little bit of bookkeeping aside, let's go ahead and find out what the randomized Bushwacker we get will be. So, our veteran commander is getting a... bum-ba-da-da. Boom. Bushwacker S2. It's definitely not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. So let's go ahead. Again, we already know kind of what we want to do with the Assassin. We know we're probably going to pull everything off the Hornet that we can to make that work. But let's look at the Bushwacker, because this might change our plans slightly. We already did buy the LRM, the enhanced LRM. So we're definitely using that. But now that we have our Bushwacker, maybe it goes in here instead. So we have SRMs and an LB-10. That's interesting. We also have AMS with high explosive ammo, which is cool. But specifically the reason I say it's interesting is LBX autocannons, they have alternate ammunition, so you can have either cluster or slug. That's the most noticeable immediately thing that is different between a standard autocannon 10 and an LBX autocannon 10. So the standard slug ammo does additional stability damage, increases range, but otherwise is just a pinpoint slug. Just like an AC-10 shot is a pinpoint AC-10 shot. So autocannons go, the ratings for the autocannons go 2 rating, 5 rating, 10 rating, 20 rating. It's increasing tonnage, so the weight of the weapon, increasing damage, the size of the shot, the size of the munition that's being launched, and reduces the range as you get bigger, because it's a heavier projectile, so it's very hard to push it as far when it's much heavier. I don't really use AC-10s super often. Usually, if I have the tonnage for an AC-10, I either replace it with an AC-5 and something else, or upgrade it to an AC-20 if possible. But that's... So, I'm going to go into detail of why I just said that. The reason why I prefer either the full AC-20 or breaking the AC-10 down to an AC-5 is because the damage to tonnage is one consideration, The amount of ammo per ton of bin, or per ton spent on an ammunition bin is another consideration. But the biggest consideration is actually breakpoints. So you'll notice the LB10, just the stock standard, the slugs, not the cluster. We'll get to that in a second. The standard slug with the AC-10 is going to do 60 damage. So, if you look at our medium mech here, our 55-ton medium mech, we have 90 armor on the arms. So it's not going to punch through even our arm armor in one shot. Whereas an AC-20 does 100 damage pinpoint. So if you hit a mech in the arm, a medium or lower mech in the arm, you will definitely, at the very least, rip open the armor with an AC-20 shot. An AC-10 shot is not sufficient to punch through the armor of a medium mech in one shot. And I'm just gonna jump over, and we're gonna go to the Locust here, and you'll see the Locust has a maximum of 30 armor. AC-2s I also don't often use for the same reason of, if you have a 20-ton mech with its armor maxed, you're not even going to be able to punch through the armor on the arm of a light mech with a single shot. And that's really what I mostly use autocannons for. It's not the only thing to use autocannons for, but it is the primary thing I use autocannons and LBX autocannons for. Rotary autocannons are a completely different beast, but just autocannons and LBX autocannons, where you're firing a pinpoint slug, if it's not enough to punch through the armor of the target, then you either need to drop to a smaller one that will do just as little to the, or that will still not punch through the armor, but if the armor is already open, will have a significant crit chance, which is the thing that autocannons are best for, is critting. Any ballistic is going to be the best crit chance of anything you could possibly be shooting them with. Well, for the most part. There's an asterisk after that. But that's beyond the scope of today's video. Machine guns are actually the de facto champion of crits, if there is no armor. The larger the autocannon, the higher the armor you can crit through, and the higher the through armor crit chance. But the difference between the amount of armor an AC-5 and an AC-10 can crit through, and the amount of through armor crit chance, is not significant enough, in my opinion, for my use case of autocannons, to justify the extra tonnage and the reduced ammunition. This is part of the reason why I'm trying to make sure that I go explicitly through every single thought that I'm having, is because I want to make sure you understand, whenever I'm presenting information to you through this series, what is me remembering potentially a previous balance patch, a previous entire save breaks. Like, I've been playing Roguetech since the days when it was literally just, hey, here's some extra mechs and access to the Lost Tech and some other, equipment and stuff, before they had any of the, the deep system reworks that they have managed to put together since then. So I've gradually seen this mod pack change. Oh, also the not losing evasion when you got shot at. That was also the, initial big thing that made Roguetech different from the vanilla experience. But for now, just the important thing to note is the breakpoints. So, 20-tonner, 30 armor points on the arm. 40-tonner. 40-tonner, we have 60 on the arm. So a 40-tonner, anything lower than a 40-tonner, the AC-10 will actually be able to completely breach the armor in a single shot. AC-5 is my preferred caliber of autocannon, also for rotary autocannons, but use cases. My specific use cases for autocannons, yeah. So with a 45 damage projectile, again, it's not going to punch all the way through a maxed out arm, but 45 damage to 60 armor, or anything less than 60 armor, will get it within range that, with an AC 5, and a single LRM lands. That LRM, by hitting and doing the rest of the armor damage, has a chance to crit. Any additional missiles that hit will also have a chance to crit. If you're using SRMs, since they do 10 damage per missile, if you do 45 damage to this arm, all you need is 2 SRMs to hit. So if you hit with an AC 5 and 2 SRMs, you are already open and critting, potentially, if there's something to crit. Obviously, if there's no weapon, then you can't crit anything in the arm. But that then transitions over to the side torso as well. So, again, it's just the breakpoints. This is the point where if you're using it as a nutcracker just to get it open and get crits, this is where the AC 20 is king. Because there's nothing else in the game, well, there's nothing as easily attainable as early as an AC 20. Whenever you just want to punch a big hole in a target and then follow up with a lot of little projectiles and clusters of damage to crit things out. So, that's the whole difference between, well, that's the damage portion of the consideration between the different calibers of autocannons. And it does take a lot more thought to use autocannons properly than it does to use missiles or lasers. Lasers, the crit chance for most, again, there's an asterisk. General practice, the vast majority of lasers, there are a few exceptions, but the vast majority of lasers have an almost negligible crit chance through armor. Even once they're open, lasers aren't incredibly high crit chance, but like, if the armor is not gone, lasers are almost never going to crit. There's a few specific, like the bombast laser, and the very specific lasers have higher than usual crit chances, specifically through armor, but most of the energy weapons, or not energy, that's another thing that we will get to when we get to it, but lasers, the most common weapons in the inner sphere. Very low crit chance through armor. Cannot crit through very much armor at all. Missiles, it's just a matter of how much damage each missile does, how many are shot at a time, and what the range is. There's no more thought required than that until you start messing with specialty ammo. But autocannons. Autocannons. So anyway, back before I got off on that tangent. So autocannons, the LB10 here, and there wasn't a standard autocannon 10 for me to compare tonnage to. I know he's gonna be annoyed, but I'm gonna ask future me to make a notation here of the tonnage difference, if there is one, as well as the range difference, if there is one, to this display right here. Because I noticed they have now, on the slug ammo, you have an increase to the short, medium, long, and extreme range shots, which means this LB10 can fire up to 720 meters. But this slug round can go an extra 120 meters for a total of 840 meters. This LB10 cluster ammo, on the other hand, does not have the extended range, but it does have plus 50% crit chance, 1 evasion ignore, and bonus damage. So what that does, that plus 15% damage, it adds to this. So the 15% here would be an extra 9 damage. So these projectiles, it splits into 10 projectiles, and those projectiles are each doing roughly 7 damage-ish, just shy. Now, they do have to reach 90 meters before they separate. So if you want to use cluster effectively, you're going to want to use it at not point blank range, because it does have the 25% damage penalty below separate. And again, this is just one specialty ammo. Missiles have a lot of different specialty ammos, but LBX autocannons, it's mostly just slug and cluster. But the thing is, remember what I was just saying about the consideration of how you use the autocannons. It does have the additional 50% crit chance, but anytime you see that, and this is very important for everything across the entire thing, when you see a weapon that has ammo that says plus 50% crit chance, that does not mean when you're shooting something you have a 50% crit chance. It means it's increasing whatever the base crit chance of that particular weapon system is by 50%. So, hypothetically, if you had a laser that had a plus 50% critical hit chance tag on it, since the laser has a very low base crit chance, that plus 50% tag means less than if it's on something that has a much higher base crit chance. And that's right back to where I was saying. The autocannons are the highest base crit chance. Well, ballistics in general are the highest base crit chance in the game. Early game weapon systems, the autocannons are the kings of crits. So having a plus 50% crit chance on a high crit chance weapon with a high through armor threshold, which means, and I know this is a lot of front loading, and this is all just talking about the autocannon so far, but here's the cool thing. I'm gonna keep doing this every time it comes up, every time I'm thinking about it, until we start getting to the point where, okay, I've covered this 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times every time it's come up. Here in a month or two, whenever we're playing and we run across an LB-10 autocannon with some cluster ammo, I might still draw some attention to the key points. But having gone through it like this several times every time it's popped into my head, hopefully we'll all be on the same page. And that is how you defeat the learning curve on something that is so beautifully enormous, complex, and full of content. And RNG, randomness, the random number generator, in case nobody's ever spelled it out. Random number generator, RNG. Those things play a factor in what you see on any given playthrough, and they also play a factor on where your rounds. If future me didn't edit that out, haha, very funny. Now I look like a fool. Well done, future me. That's what I get for asking him to do something. Any case, so LBX Autocannon 10. The +1 accuracy is offset, or not offset, is a consideration in addition to it having a recoil. So whenever you have a weapon that has a bonus accuracy, +1 accuracy with this weapon, so +1 accuracy offsets 1 defense. 1 defense is roughly equal to 1/2 of an evasion. So this is part of the reason I'm coming to this completely blind with no spoilers to any of the changes, because I want to catch what I'm assuming based on my past experience and make sure that I'm making explicitly clear what is in this playthrough confirmed and what I am drawing on past experience for. So I'm not even going to ballpark the accuracy percent hit chances, because those might have been reworked. But 1 defense offsets 1 accuracy. 2 evasion, or 2 defense is 1 evasion's worth of defense, of accuracy penalty. Base hit chance that you get when you're leveling up gunnery as a Mechwarrior, on your Mechwarriors, is not the same as +1 accuracy. Has a recoil of 1. The way recoil works is the first round that you shoot the weapon, it does nothing. It has recoil gives 0 penalty on the first shot. If you then fire the round after you have fired, you have an accuracy penalty. A recoil penalty is higher than an accuracy penalty. So +1 accuracy does not offset 1 recoil. You have to be aware of how recoil works. If you have not fired it, there is no penalty. If you fired it the round prior, you get a penalty. So for every round that you continuously fire back to back to back to back, you maintain the recoil penalty. So if it has a recoil penalty of 1, so recoil of 1, you can fire every single round the entire mission and you will have the same penalty every single round. However, if at any point you choose to not fire the autocannon, or whatever other weapon has recoil, the next round that it activates, it will not have any penalty from recoil. The next round you'll be able to fire with no penalty. So even if something has a recoil of 6 or more, I don't even know if there is a or more, I know I've seen recoil of 6. You do not need any special equipment to run that weapon system. So if you have a recoil of whatever, if you don't fire and then you fire, there is no penalty. If you then don't fire and then fire and then don't fire and then fire the entire mission, you will never have a penalty from recoil, as long as you always take that turn off. And if you have a high recoil and no recoil mitigation at all, you'll be able to know when it's I need to take this round off with this weapon, because your hit chance will be catastrophically low compared to normal. Now, the other side of the coin there, if you are firing round after round after round, and you're firing at an acceptable hit chance, if you're getting, depending on the situation, acceptable can mean very many different things, but let's just say, best case scenario, you're firing every single round with this LB10 and you're getting 85% plus hit chances every single shot. You're still suffering the recoil penalty unless you accidentally included something that mitigated it, but we're just assuming you didn't. You're dealing with the recoil. As long as the hit chance is high enough that it's worth taking the shot compared to taking that round off to get a better shot on the next round, recoil can, for all intents and purposes, just be ignored. With all that out of the way, we get to the last 2 things about this particular autocannon's special traits before we go on with the rest of everything. It can be used with recoil damper weapon attachments. That is a new thing for the handheld rework. You can upgrade or attach to your weapons. I don't know what they do. I'm assuming, obviously, that this is a recoil damper attachment, so I assume the key focus of what it does is reduce the recoil penalty. But as with everything else in the game, I'm sure there's either special quirks that come along, or possibly or special variants that you can find that are more rare that do additional nice little things. And then the other thing is the anti-air factor. The anti-air factor largely has to do with airstrikes, which is a thing that honestly I have zero experience with beyond when they were first implemented. I thought I was being shot in the back by stealth mechs, but it was strafing runs from aerospace fighters, because that got added to the game mid-playthrough. 11 tons means out of the 55 tons that make up this mech, chassis, gyro, engine core, armor, everything, 55 tons of weight being put in a dropship and dropped onto the battlefield, this weapon system is 20% of it. All for just the weapon system, not including the ammunition. So an AC-10 is hefty. Plus the bins of ammo. You'll notice that each bin of an LB-10 has 10 shots here. That means for a 10-round engagement, if you're firing every single round, you need 1 bin for every 10 rounds. So that's 1 ton for every 10 rounds. But just understand that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to autocannons, especially earlier in the game when an autocannon takes up a considerable portion of your tonnage. There might be cuts where he just cut out where I told him to do things. Not gonna lie. But I'm trying to teach myself how to teach, basically, right now. So that's what yesterday and today are. This thing takes up 6 slots. That means that in that location, you could only have so many other things. But also, one thing that a lot of people don't realize early on, the number of slots that a weapon has determines how likely that weapon is to be crit out of all the things in that location, and how many times a weapon can be crit before it is destroyed. This large laser, this is a 1-slot weapon. If the slot gets crit, it is a destroyed laser. Period. There is no crit, damaged, destroyed. It is just, it is crit, it is destroyed. This LBX autocannon, on the other hand, because it is a 6-slot weapon, it can take multiple crits before it is destroyed. You will have to pay after the mission to repair it to full functioning working order. While it is crit, bad things can happen. Most notably, your accuracy will be decreased. So I'll just leave it at that for now and put a pin in it. And I'm going to try to keep doing that every time I'm about to go into further detail that A, is not immediately relevant and doesn't need to really be thought about. That's also playstyle. I very much prefer to get up close and run circles around my enemies rather than sit really far back and lob large damage numbers. I know some people who swear by slugs and only ever use clusters for crit seeking. That's fine. It's just a different playstyle. You will find your own playstyle as you learn and as you play and as you figure out what you enjoy the most. That's not for me to tell you. I'm here to tell you that no matter what playstyle you enjoy the most, it is valid. Even if it's not the most optimal, even if it's not the hot new thing that everyone's talking about being so broken and OP, the important thing is you have fun with it. Have fun, first and foremost. Have fun. This is a streak SRM. This is a standard SRM. You'll notice the standard SRM for every 2 tubes, so SRM 2 is 1 ton, SRM 4 is 2 tons, SRM 6 is 3 tons. Streak SRM 2s, you add a half ton for every 2 tubes. A standard weapon that has whatever damage times whatever number of instances of damage. When it fires, it'll fire all those damage instances, in this case 6. If it's not a specialty ammunition that is spreading, like the cluster ammo only counts as 1 shot, 1 round of ammo. The SRM 6 is going to fire 6 missiles. So whenever you look at the bin of ammo, that bin of ammo has 100 shots, 100 missiles to be fired. So every time this SRM 6 fires, it's using 6 out of the 100 missiles. In addition to that, each missile is calculated independently as far as whether or not it hits. So if you have a 50% hit chance, that is not a 50% chance to do 60 damage and a 50% chance to do 0 damage. It is each individual missile has a 50% chance of hitting the mech. Not the location, the mech. We'll get to locations in a moment. But first, each missile is rolled separately. So what that means is if you have a 50% hit chance with a missile system, you effectively have a higher than 50% hit chance for doing some damage, and a lower than 50% hit chance of doing all of the damage, just because of how probability works. Which is a thing you do need to consider whenever you're planning your mech loadouts, your mission strategies, your firing order of your weapons. There's a lot of considerations that rely on a basic literacy in probability to play optimally. And that's what I'm really trying to help you do. It doesn't mean I expect you to, and it doesn't mean you have to. Sometimes playing suboptimally is fun. Sometimes turning brain off and rack go Bert is really, really fun. But if you want the most in-depth understanding of and proficiency with Roguetech possible, a degree of understanding of probability is important. Not just for when you see a hit chance, having a better idea of how it goes rather than just, that's XCOM, baby. But more so, to have a better feel for when you should be firing at a particular target, focus firing, or if you should be spreading your shots between higher higher hit chances based on the mechs and their positioning. There's a lot to tactics, there's a lot to discuss in-game. But even in the mech bay, understanding how the probabilities work will help you better plan and build your mechs. I just want to stress how important it is that I am not here to tell you how to play. I am here to offer the absolute maximum proficiency I can share, and you can take as much or as little as you want. So, on that note, streaks. Streaks still have the multiple damage instances. However, streaks are special in that they only roll to hit once. If the streak launcher lands the hit, it fires and all of the missiles will hit. If it misses, it will not fire. Now that's a key thing to understand. It's not the same as it missed. If an autocannon misses, you still used that heat to fire it. If an autocannon misses, you still lost that slug or that cluster. If a streak missile system does not get the target lock and does not fire, it generates no heat, it does not use any ammunition, and if applicable, it does not create recoil penalty. Yes, there are some streak launchers that have had recoil penalty in the past. I don't know if those janky little things are still around, but I love them. There are a lot of, especially pirate tech, for one, and there are a lot of quick sell and just society tech, and there's a lot of very quirky weapon systems in this game. One of my favorite types of weapon systems in the game is the streak launcher. So, what this lets you do, if you have especially multiple streak launchers, is you can put a Mechwarrior that you know is going to have a less than perfect hit chance into a mech with streak launchers and actually build it hot so that he has all the buttons and he can push all the buttons, but he'll only overheat in the off chance that he actually hits all the shots. Just a little tool for the toolbox. Now then, this, whether one missile hits or 6 missiles hit, and whether all the missiles hit, brings up the next point to make whenever it comes to pinpoint versus splash damage. If you have an SRM-6 and you get lucky and all 6 missiles hit, that does not mean you're going to do 60 damage to the side torso or the arm. That means you are going to do 10 damage to 6 locations. Which 6 locations are determined by clustering. Clustering is a separate statistics roll. So, anytime any weapon hits a mech, I'm gonna save the specifics for once we're in a mission and I can show you. But the initial hit finds a location by chance, based on... we'll get to that in a mission. But a location is picked for the hit. If it's a pinpoint weapon, that's it. Move on. All the damage goes to that location. The end. If it's not a pinpoint weapon, if there are multiple damage instances, this applies to everything from rotary autocannons to rotary Gauss rifles to machine guns to SRMs to LRMs. If it has multiple damage instances, those additional instances of damage are then rolled on a clustering roll. So again, the initial hit, whatever the initial first projectile to hit the target found as its location, that's the first point. The next damage instance that hits rolls based on that location. Not generating heat and not costing ammunition when it misses is a benefit. Having a higher tonnage per tube is a cost. Having higher clustering might not be good in one situation, but it might be exactly what you want in another situation. I'm not being facetious with these videos. I know I'm getting off on tangent, but like, these are all the things Whenever I am glancing at a mech and I'm seeing, oh, it has an SRM-6 and a Streak SRM-2, all of those considerations and experiences and thoughts have all at least been acknowledged in my brain. Me sitting here trying to explain every single thing that I'm thinking whenever I'm trying to discuss SRM versus Streak SRM. I'm not being facetious. I'm literally trying to tell you every consideration whenever I look at just these two weapon systems. Every consideration, every thought, every experience that comes to mind. I'm trying to share with you how much there is to think about whenever you see something as simple as one extra word on a weapon system. Oh, also, I didn't mention that. If an ammo bin gets crit, so if the location gets hit, if the hit is rolled and either through armor or has no armor left, a crit is rolled, and then from that crit, that slot gets rolled, and that slot has an ammo bin in it. That ammo bin then gets an additional roll to see whether it's destroyed or explodes. Ammo bin destruction means it's out. You just don't have the ammo anymore. It just stopped working. They fell out. All the bullets fell out. A crit that causes an ammo explosion, you have a bad day. So that is the Bushwacker. Oh man, up till now is probably a hodgepodge of cuts. So, that has been your episode of Roguetech for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one.